welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really thought-provoking text that's been making the rounds online. It's sometimes called the Unholy Manifesto, and you can find the source material over at unholy101manifesto.com. It's got this powerful counterargument to one of the biggest debates of our time, identity politics. We're going to break down its claims piece by piece and see how it completely flips the script on the whole conversation. Let's get into it.
So you've probably heard this a million times, right? That identity politics are what's dividing us, that they're tearing society apart. It's a really common critique. And that is the exact idea that the source for today's explainer is here to completely dismantle.
And here it is, the core argument right up front. The source basically says, hey, we've got this all backwards. The problem isn't minority groups talking about their identity. The problem, it argues, started way back when a self-appointed normal majority decided that those other identities were a problem to begin with.
Okay, so to really get this argument, we have to start where the author does. And that means we need to take a hard look at the very idea of normal. The text argues that what we all just accept as normal, well, it isn't natural at all. It's a political invention.
And this definition is absolutely key. The source calls normal a silent monopoly. I mean, think about it. If you're considered normal, you have the privilege of just existing. You don't have to explain your culture, your holidays, your way of life. You're the default setting. Everyone else's existence, though, is treated like it's some kind of choice that needs to be justified.
So if normal is this comfortable default position, what happens when that comfort gets, well, uncomfortable? According to the source, this is where the conflict starts. The moment that people outside that norm ask to be seen. So you can really see the split here, right? The text describes two completely different realities. On one side, you have the normal group that just gets to be. Their identity is basically invisible. But on the other side, you have groups who are forced into being political, not by their own choice, but because their difference was turned into a political issue by others. And this is where the source says a critical switch happens. The very moment a marginalized group asks to be visible or to live openly, their existence gets reframed as an attack. All of a sudden, just being seen is called aggression, and showing pride is called a provocation. So how does the text describe this whole dynamic? Well, it uses this really powerful metaphor. It's like a game with rigged rules. And it calls the system an oligarchy of the normal, where one group isn't just playing the game, they actually own the rulebook. And that right there, that's the absolute heart of it. The source argues that identity politics didn't start the fight. It's a reaction to a game that was already being played, a game that marginalized groups got drafted into without ever even asking to be on the team. And according to the text, these are the rigged rules. It's a pretty devastatingly simple playbook. First, we get to decide what's normal. Second, if you don't fit into that box, you need to stay quiet about it. And third, if you dare to speak up, well, then you're the one being divisive. It's a perfect, self-protecting loop. You know, this whole thing naturally leads to a much bigger question. One about something we all say we value, freedom. The text pushes this idea, asking who gets to control not just the rules, but the very meaning of happiness and dignity. And the text makes a super sharp point here. It argues that when a majority group tells a minority to be less visible, to quiet down, they aren't defending some big idea of freedom for everyone. No, they're defending their monopoly on it, the power to decide what a happy, dignified life is even allowed to look like. And this quote, it's basically the moral bedrock of the whole argument. The source is making it clear that freedom isn't some conditional privilege. It doesn't belong to just one type of person or one tradition or one identity. It's a universal right for every single person, period. Okay, so if the whole system is designed to control people, what's its main tool? And maybe more importantly, how do you fight back? The source presents this really powerful pairing, humiliation and pride. According to this text, the number one weapon of the oligarchy of the normal is shame. The whole goal is to make people feel that who they are is something to be hidden, something to be embarrassed about. It's a way of enforcing control by getting people to censor themselves. You know, just hide who you are and we'll leave you alone. So, how do you counter a weapon like shame? What's the direct response? Pride. The source frames pride not as an act of aggression, but as a necessary, defiant act of survival. A way to dismantle that shame by simply refusing to hide. And this reframing is everything. Pride, in this context, isn't about arrogance or saying, I'm better than you. Not at all.
The source defines it as the direct opposite of humiliation. It's the simple but pretty radical act of reclaiming your basic human right to exist visibly and without shame.
All right, let's pull all these threads together because this is where the text builds to its final, really provocative conclusion. After breaking down the game, the rules, and the emotional weapons, the source finally points to what it says is the real problem.
And the text uses these powerful examples to really hammer the point home. It argues that we need to stop focusing on the identities themselves and start looking at the actions used to suppress them. The threat isn't the trans person or the immigrant or queer love. The threat, it says, is the person or system that tries to legislate, exclude, or deny them dignity because of who they are. And boom, there it is. That's the core thesis of the entire piece. The author concludes that the only form of identity oppression that really matters is the power structure that gets to decide who's normal, and by doing that, decides who isn't. So where does that leave us? Well, the text leaves you with one final, pretty challenging question to think about. It suggests that maybe all our debates about our differences are kind of missing the point. Perhaps the real question isn't about our identities at all, but about this. Who, if anyone, should ever have the power to define normal in the first place?